When the lights died across the city, Emma Reed thought the worst thing that could happen was losing the last shift that kept her rent paid. She was 24, exhausted, soaked from the rain, and holding a paper bag with 2 stale rolls from the bakery where she worked nights. Then she found a bleeding stranger collapsed behind the service entrance of her building, dressed too well to belong in her broken neighborhood and too silent to ask for help. Anyone else would have locked the door. Anyone else would have called the police and walked away. But Emma had never known how to abandon someone who looked alone. So she dragged him inside, gave him her last blanket, cleaned the blood from his temple with trembling hands, and whispered, "You can stay until morning." She did not know the man on her couch was Luca Moretti, the most feared mafia boss on the East Coast. She did not know half the city was searching for him. And she certainly did not know that by sunrise, the most dangerous man alive would remember her kindness as if it were a sacred debt. The blackout began at 9:17 p.m., just as Emma Reed was counting the coins in her apron pocket and wondering whether she could afford both bus fare and dinner. The bakery's ovens had gone cold, the street outside had turned black, and Mrs. Alvarez, her boss, had sighed like the whole city had personally disappointed her. "Go home, sweetheart," she said, pressing 2 leftover rolls into Emma's hand. "No power, no customers." Emma smiled, even though her feet hurt and her chest felt tight with worry. Rent was due in 3 days. Her little apartment above the closed laundromat had a ceiling that leaked whenever it rained, a radiator that coughed more than it heated, and a landlord who treated mercy like a foreign language. Still, she thanked Mrs. Alvarez and stepped into the storm. The city had become a shadow of itself. Traffic lights were dead. Sirens screamed somewhere far away. People moved quickly with their heads down, afraid of the dark and of each other. Emma pulled her coat tighter and walked, because the buses had stopped running. Her shoes were thin, her hair was plastered to her cheeks, and the paper bag in her arms was getting damp. But when she passed an old man sitting beneath a broken awning, she stopped. He was shivering. Without thinking too long, because thinking too long always made kindness harder, she took 1 roll from the bag and handed it to him. "Please, eat this," she said softly. The man stared at her as if no one had spoken gently to him in years. "You need it more than I do," he murmured. Emma smiled. "Maybe, but you look colder." She walked away with 1 roll left and an empty stomach, not knowing that kindness had a way of echoing in places power could not reach. By the time she reached her building, the alley behind it was nearly invisible. Rain poured from the gutters in silver sheets. She was fumbling with the rusty back door when she heard it, a low sound, not quite a groan, not quite a breath. Emma froze. "Hello?" No answer. Her heart hammered. She should have gone inside. She should have locked the door. Instead, she lifted her phone, using the last sliver of battery as a flashlight. The beam found a man collapsed beside the dumpster, 1 hand pressed to his ribs, his black suit soaked, his face pale beneath streaks of rain and blood. He looked at her with dark eyes that should have frightened her. They did frighten her, but beneath the danger, she saw pain. "Please," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "Can you stand?" His jaw tightened. "Don't call anyone." His voice was rough, controlled, terrifyingly calm. "You're hurt. Don't call anyone," he repeated. Emma looked toward the street. No one was coming. No one ever came to this alley unless they had nowhere better to be. She swallowed hard, then slid his arm over her shoulder. He was heavy, all muscle and expensive wool, and contained violence, but he let her help him. Step by step, she pulled him through the service entrance, up the narrow stairs, and into her tiny apartment where 1 candle burned on the windowsill. Her home was poor, but it was clean. A patched sofa, a small table, a chipped mug with daisies on it, a blanket folded neatly, even though the room was cold. She eased him onto the couch. His gaze moved around the apartment, missing nothing. "You live here alone?" he asked. Emma stiffened. "That's not really your business." For the first time, something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "No, it isn't." She brought a bowl of water, an old towel, and the small first aid kit she kept for kitchen burns. Her hands shook as she cleaned the cut near his temple. He watched her like she was a mystery he had no intention of letting go. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Emma dabbed gently at the blood. "Because you were outside in the rain. That's all? That's enough." Silence settled between them, thick and strange. Outside, the city remained dark. Inside, the candlelight softened the hard edges of his face. He was older than her, maybe 35, with black hair, sharp cheekbones, and the kind of presence that made the small room feel like it belonged to him simply because he was breathing in it. "What's your name?" she asked. He paused. "Luca. I'm Emma." He repeated her name quietly, almost carefully. "Emma." Something about the way he said it made her look away. She gave him the blanket, then placed her last roll on the table beside him. "You should eat." His eyes lowered to the bread. "Is this your dinner?" Emma forced a smile. "I'm not hungry." Luca stared at her, and for one breath the dangerous calm on his face cracked. "Not much. Just enough for her to see something old and wounded beneath it." "Liar," he said softly. She should have been offended. Instead, she laughed under her breath, tired and embarrassed. "Maybe." He broke the roll in half and held one piece out to her. "Then we both lie." She hesitated before taking it. They ate in silence while rain battered the windows. Emma did not know that across the city, men with guns and black cars were searching every street for Luca Moretti. She did not know powerful enemies believed they had finally cornered the king of the underworld. She only knew that a stranger was hurt, and no one deserved to bleed alone in the dark. Near midnight, Luca stood despite the pain. "I have to go." Emma rose quickly. "You can barely walk." "I've survived worse." "That doesn't mean you should." He looked at her then, really looked, as if no one had ever told him he should take care of himself, and meant it without wanting something in return. His voice dropped. "You shouldn't be kind to men like me." Emma held the candle between them. "Maybe men like you need it most." The room went very still. Luca stepped closer, close enough that she could smell rain, smoke, and expensive cologne. "You have no idea what I am." "No," she whispered. "I don't." His eyes darkened. "Good." He reached into his coat, took out a black card with no name, only a number embossed in silver, and placed it on her table. "If you ever need anything, call." Emma frowned. "I didn't help you for money." "I know." "Then take it back." "No." The word was quiet, absolute. He moved toward the door, then stopped with his hand on the frame. "Lock this behind me." "And Emma?" She looked up. "Yes?" His gaze softened for half a second. "Never give your last piece of bread to a stranger again." Then he disappeared into the dark. Emma locked the door, pressed her back against it, and told herself she would never see him again. But downstairs, 3 black cars rolled silently into the alley. Men stepped out, heads bowed. One of them opened an umbrella over Luca as if he were royalty. Luca did not look at them. He looked up at Emma's small window, where one candle still burned. "Find out who owns this building," he said. His right-hand man nodded. "And the girl?" Luca's expression turned unreadable. "No one touches her. Not now. Not ever." By morning the city had power again, but Emma Reed's apartment felt different, as if the darkness had left something behind. She woke on the floor beside the couch, wrapped in her thin sweater, with the candle burned down to a puddle of wax and the black card still resting on her table. For several seconds she stared at it without moving. The number shimmered faintly in the gray morning light, elegant and cold, like it belonged to a world where no one counted coins before buying bread. She picked it up, turned it over, and found nothing else. No name, no company, no explanation. Only a promise she had not asked for. Emma almost threw it away. Almost. Instead, she slipped it into the cracked drawer beside her bed, beneath unpaid bills and a photograph of her mother, then got ready for work. The bakery smelled of yeast, sugar, and warm butter, and for a little while Emma convinced herself that last night had been only a strange accident during a storm. Then her landlord came in before noon, shaking rain from his expensive umbrella, even though the sky had cleared. Mr. Barlow was a narrow man, with pale eyes and a voice that made every sentence sound like an accusation. "Miss Reed," he said, loud enough for the customers to hear, "you're late on rent again." Emma's cheeks burned. "It's due in 3 days." "Not anymore. Building ownership changed hands this morning. New management wants all overdue tenants reviewed immediately." Her stomach dropped. "Changed hands?" "Sold before breakfast." He smiled, as if her fear amused him. "So, unless you can pay 2 months in advance by tonight, I suggest you start packing." Mrs. Alvarez stepped forward. "You can't do that. I can do whatever the lease allows." Barlow turned back to Emma. "People like you always think kindness pays bills. It doesn't." Emma stood frozen, humiliated in her flour-stained apron while customers pretended not to watch. She wanted to cry, but crying in front of cruel people always felt like handing them a gift. "I'll find the money," she whispered. Barlow leaned closer. No, sweetheart, you won't. He left with a smile. Emma worked the rest of her shift with shaking hands. By evening, her feet ached, her head throbbed, and the black card in her drawer felt heavier than stone. She did not want to call Luca. She did not even know who Luca was. But when she returned to her building, she found men carrying furniture from the apartment across the hall, and Mrs. Bell, the elderly widow who lived there, sobbing beside a cardboard box of dishes. They said we all have to go. Mrs. Bell cried. Tonight. Something inside, Emma snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet break in the part of her that had accepted too much. She went upstairs, opened the drawer, and took out the black card. Her thumb hovered over her phone. She told herself she was not calling for herself. She was calling for Mrs. Bell, for the children downstairs, for everyone who had nowhere to go. The line rang once. A man answered. Yes? Emma swallowed. I'm looking for Luca. Silence. Then the man's voice changed. Who is this? Emma Reed. The silence became sharper. Somewhere far away, she heard movement, a door opening, a muffled command. Then another voice came on the line, low and familiar. Emma. Her knees nearly gave out. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. Tell me. Just 2 words, but they sounded like an order given to the world. Emma looked out her window at the street below, where families stood in the cold with boxes at their feet. My building was sold. They're evicting people. An old woman across the hall has nowhere to go. I don't know what you meant when you said to call if I needed anything, but I need someone who can stop this. Luca was silent for one breath. Are you safe? That's not what I asked. Answer me. His voice was calm, but something dangerous moved beneath it. Emma glanced toward her door as Barlow's voice echoed downstairs. For now, lock your door. Luca, lock it. She obeyed before she could argue. Done. Stay away from the windows. Why? Because men who frighten widows for profit do not deserve warning. The line went dead. Emma stared at her phone, heart pounding. 10 minutes later, the street below filled with headlights. Not 1 car, not 2. 6 black vehicles rolled up to the curb like shadows with engines. Men in dark suits stepped out with perfect silence. The families on the sidewalk stopped crying. Mr. Barlow came out of the lobby, red-faced and shouting, but his voice died the moment Luca Moretti stepped from the center car. In daylight, he looked even more impossible than he had in her candlelit room. Black coat, white shirt, no tie, a bandage near his temple. The posture of a man who had never needed to raise his voice twice. He looked up once, directly at Emma's window, as if he knew exactly where she stood. Then he turned to Barlow. Emma could not hear every word through the glass, but she saw Barlow's confidence drain from his face. A folder was handed over. Papers changed hands. Barlow shook his head violently. Luca did not move. One of Luca's men spoke into a phone. Another opened a tablet. Within minutes, 2 police cars arrived, but not for the tenants. They went straight to Barlow. Emma pressed a hand over her mouth as officers took him aside. Mrs. Bell looked up at Emma's window, stunned. Then Luca entered the building. Every step on the stairs sounded measured, controlled, final. When he knocked on Emma's door, she opened it with trembling hands. He filled the doorway, dangerous and beautiful and far too real. You called, he said. I didn't know what else to do. His eyes moved over her face, searching for tears, bruises, fear. Did he threaten you? He threatened everyone. Luca's jaw tightened. Not anymore. Emma looked past him toward the hall. What did you do? Bought the building. Her breath caught. You what? Technically, I bought the company that bought the building. He said it like someone else might say he had bought coffee. All evictions are canceled. Rent is frozen for 3 years. Repairs begin tomorrow. Emma stared at him. That's insane. No. His gaze softened. Leaving you afraid would be insane. She stepped back, overwhelmed. Luca, I only helped you for 1 night. And I remember. You don't owe me this. He entered slowly, not touching her, not crossing too close until she allowed it. You gave me shelter when half the city wanted me dead. Emma's voice fell. Wanted you dead? His eyes darkened, and for the first time she understood that the man in her apartment was not simply rich, not simply powerful. He was something people feared in whispers. "Who are you?" she asked. Luca looked at the small couch where he had bled, the table where they had shared bread, the blanket still folded at one end. "A man you should have left in the rain. That's not an answer." "No." He looked back at her. "But it is the safest one." A sound rose from downstairs, Mrs. Bell laughing through tears, children cheering, tenants realizing they were not being thrown into the cold. Emma's eyes filled despite herself. Luca noticed immediately. "Why are you crying?" She wiped her cheek quickly. "Because no one has ever helped us like that." His expression changed. Something fierce and almost broken crossed his face. "Then everyone before me was a fool." Emma's heart stumbled. He reached into his coat and placed a folded document on her table. "New lease. Your apartment is yours as long as you want it. I can't accept special treatment." "It isn't special. You bought a building because I made one phone call." He stepped closer. "Emma, I would have bought the street." She forgot how to breathe. The words were too intense, too impossible, too much. "You don't even know me." Luca's voice dropped. "I know you gave your last bread to an old man. I know you dragged a bleeding stranger up 2 flights of stairs when you were afraid. I know you lied about being hungry so I would eat. I know you look at people the world has thrown away and somehow still see someone worth saving." His gaze held hers. "That is enough." For a moment, the city outside seemed to disappear. Then his phone rang. Luca looked at the screen, and the tenderness vanished from his face so completely that Emma felt cold. He answered in Italian, his voice quiet, lethal. She understood none of the words, but she understood the effect. The air changed. The man who had frozen her rent and protected widows was also the man who could make someone disappear with a sentence. When he ended the call, he turned toward the door. "I have to go." "Trouble?" she asked before she could stop herself. Luca paused. "Not for you." "That wasn't what I asked." Something like a smile touched his mouth. "Careful, Emma Reed. You are getting brave with me. Maybe you make it easy." His eyes burned into hers. "I make nothing easy." He opened the door, then stopped. "Do not leave this building tonight." "Why?" "Because the men who tried to kill me now know someone helped me." Her blood went cold. "Do they know it was me?" Luca's silence answered. He stepped back toward her, close enough that his shadow covered the floor between them. "Listen to me carefully. No one will hurt you. No one will frighten you. No one will take you from this apartment unless I allow it." His voice lowered. "And I will never allow it." Emma should have been terrified. Part of her was. But another part, the loneliest part, felt something dangerously close to safe. Luca left 2 men outside her door. Downstairs, the tenants celebrated their miracle. Across the city, a war quietly began because the Mafia boss who never spared anyone had found the one woman whose kindness he refused to forget. Emma did not sleep that night. How could she, when 2 silent men in black suits stood outside her apartment door like statues guarding a queen who still owned only 3 pairs of socks and a cracked coffee mug? Every time the floor creaked, her heart jumped. Every time a car passed below, she moved toward the window, then remembered Luca's warning and stepped back into the shadows. "Do not leave this building tonight." The words had not sounded like advice. They had sounded like the kind of order men obeyed because they wanted to keep breathing. At 2 in the morning, Emma opened her door just enough to see one of the guards turn his head. "Miss Reed," he said politely. She blinked. "You know my name?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you know his?" The man hesitated. "Mr. Moretti." The name meant nothing and everything. It sounded old, expensive, dangerous. "Is he really that bad?" she asked, before she could lose courage. The guard looked down the hall, then back at her. "To his enemies, yes. And to everyone else?" The man's expression softened almost invisibly. "There usually isn't anyone else." Emma closed the door slowly, carrying those words with her until morning. At the bakery, whispers followed her before she even tied her apron. Mrs. Alvarez pulled her into the storage room, eyes wide. "Sweetheart, what happened at your building? People say the owner was arrested. People say men in black cars came. People say the whole block belongs to some billionaire now." Emma tried to smile. "People say a lot." "Emma." Mrs. Alvarez took her hands. "Are you in trouble?" The honest answer sat heavy in her throat. "I don't know." Instead, she said, "I helped someone." He helped back. But trouble arrived before noon, wearing a gray coat and a smile too polished to be kind. He entered the bakery with 2 men behind him and ordered nothing. The bell above the door gave a cheerful ring that made Emma's stomach twist. He was handsome, in a cold way, with blonde hair, pale eyes, and the relaxed cruelty of a man who enjoyed making people nervous. "Emma Reed," he said. "Mrs. Alvarez stepped forward. "Can I help you?" The man ignored her. His gaze stayed on Emma. "You took in a stranger during the blackout." Emma's fingers tightened around the tray she was holding. "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you do." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "Luca Moretti spent 4 hours missing. Then he reappeared with blood on his shirt and your address on his silence. That makes you interesting." Emma forced herself not to step back. "I'm working." "Not anymore." One of his men flipped the sign on the door to closed. Mrs. Alvarez protested, but the second man blocked her path. Fear rushed through Emma so fast she nearly dropped the tray. "Leave her alone," she said. The blond man smiled, still protecting people. That must be what he liked. He reached out and brushed flour from her sleeve with a touch that made her skin crawl. "Tell me what he said. Tell me who picked him up. Tell me if he gave you anything." Emma thought of the black card hidden in her drawer. She thought of Luca bleeding on her couch, breaking bread in half because he had noticed she was hungry. She lifted her chin. "He said thank you." The man laughed softly. "Luca Moretti does not say thank you. Maybe not to people like you." The bakery went silent. Mrs. Alvarez inhaled sharply. The blond man's smile vanished. In one quick motion, he gripped Emma's wrist hard enough to hurt. "Careful, little saint. Kindness is only charming until it becomes stupidity." Pain flashed up her arm, but Emma did not cry out. Before she could speak, the bakery door opened again. No bell this time. Somehow the sound had been silenced. A man entered wearing a dark suit, followed by 3 others. He was not Luca, but he carried Luca's danger like a borrowed blade. "Mr. Moretti asked that no one touch her," he said. The blond man did not release Emma immediately. "Tell Luca that Roman Vasile doesn't take instructions from wounded kings." The suited man's eyes dropped to Emma's wrist. "Then you should have chosen a different day to prove it." What happened next was so fast Emma barely understood it. 1 second Roman was holding her. The next, his hand was empty. His body slammed against the counter, and one of Luca's men had a gun pressed beneath his ribs, where no customer outside could see. Mrs. Alvarez gasped. Emma stumbled backward, clutching her wrist. The suited man spoke into his phone. "She's safe." Vassal touched her. A pause. Then he went very still. Whatever Luca said on the other end drained all color from his face. He handed the phone to Emma. "Miss Reed." She took it with trembling fingers. "Luca." His voice was quiet. Too quiet. "Did he hurt you?" "I'm fine." "Emma." The single word tore through her lie. She looked at the red mark forming around her wrist. "He grabbed me." Silence. Then Luca said, "Put me on speaker." She obeyed. Roman, still pinned to the counter, laughed breathlessly. "Luca, you always were dramatic." Luca's voice filled the bakery, low and cold enough to freeze the room. "You touched what is under my protection." Roman's smile twitched. "Protection? Since when do you protect bakery girls?" "Since she opened her door when men like you left me to die." Roman's eyes flicked toward Emma, suddenly sharper. "So it's true. The little saint saved the wolf." Luca replied. "And now the wolf remembers." No one moved. Even the rain outside seemed quiet. "Walk out of that bakery," Luca continued, "and leave the city before sunset." Roman scoffed. "Or what?" "Or I send you back to your brother in pieces small enough to fit inside a gift box." Emma stopped breathing. The tenderness she had seen in Luca's apartment was gone. This was the man the guard had meant. The man who had enemies because mercy was not a language he spoke to them. Roman's face hardened, but fear flickered beneath it. "This isn't over." "No," Luca said. "It ended the moment you touched her." The call disconnected. Luca's men dragged Roman and his guards out through the back. The bakery remained silent after they left, filled with the smell of sugar, coffee, and terror. Mrs. Alvarez hurried to Emma. "Your wrist." Emma stared at the phone, still in her hand. "I'm okay." But she was not. By evening, the story had already spread through the neighborhood in distorted fragments. Men had come for Emma. Men had disappeared. Luca Moretti's name moved from mouth to mouth like a match near gasoline. Emma learned who he was from whispers she was never meant to hear. Head of the Moretti family, owner of shipping lines, clubs, hotels, politicians, judges, men who smiled in daylight and obeyed him after dark. A crime lord, a king without a crown, a man mothers warned sons not to cross, and yet, when a black car waited outside the bakery after closing, Emma walked toward it instead of away. The driver opened the door. Luca sat inside, his face half-shadowed, his bandage gone, his eyes fixed on her wrist before he looked at her face. "Get in," he said. Emma should have refused. She should have run. Instead, she slid into the warm leather seat, and the door closed softly behind her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The car pulled away from the curb. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safer. My apartment has guards. Your apartment has thin walls, a broken lock, and a fire escape anyone could climb." She looked at him. "You checked?" "I check everything that concerns you." Her pulse jumped. "That sounds terrifying." "It should." "Luca." He turned fully toward her then, and the city lights moved across his face like water. "I will not apologize for keeping you alive." "I didn't ask you to apologize. I'm asking what happens now." His gaze lowered again to her wrist. Slowly, carefully, he reached for her hand. He stopped before touching her, waiting. The choice was hers, and somehow that made her chest ache. Emma placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around it with impossible gentleness. He examined the bruise like it was an insult written against his soul. "What happens now," he said, "is that everyone learns the cost of frightening you. I don't want people hurt because of me. They are not hurt because of you." His thumb brushed once over her skin. "They are hurt because they made the mistake of thinking your kindness made you unprotected." Emma looked out the window as the poor streets faded into avenues lined with stone mansions and iron gates. "I don't belong in your world." "No," Luca said, "you don't." The answer stung more than she expected. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held it, not tightly, only enough to make her pause. "That is why I will bend my world until it becomes safe for you." The car entered a private driveway, guarded by men with rifles and expressionless faces. Beyond the gates stood a mansion carved from darkness and gold, every window glowing like a secret. Emma stared, overwhelmed. "Luca, I can't stay here. Tonight you can. And tomorrow?" He looked at her with a calm that felt like a vow. "Tomorrow, we decide how much of my empire needs to move so you can breathe." Inside the mansion, marble floors reflected chandelier light. Servants lowered their eyes when Luca passed. Men with guns stepped aside. Emma felt small in her bakery shoes and flour-stained coat, but Luca never walked ahead of her. He stayed beside her, as if daring the entire house to make her feel unwelcome. In a quiet room with a fireplace, a doctor checked her wrist, while Luca stood near the window, silent and furious. "It's only bruised," the doctor said. "She needs rest. She needs peace," Luca corrected. After the doctor left, Emma stood by the fire, wrapping her arms around herself. "You scared me today." Luca did not pretend not to understand. "Good." She looked at him, startled. "Good? Fear keeps innocent people away from monsters." "Are you calling yourself a monster?" He approached slowly. "I am telling you the truth before you hear it from cowards." The firelight carved shadows across his face. "I have done unforgivable things. I rule men who obey because they fear what happens if they don't. I have enemies who would burn this city to wound me." His voice softened. "And last night you looked at me like I was just a man bleeding in the rain." Emma's throat tightened. "You were? No one has seen only that in a very long time." Silence stretched between them. Then Luca reached into his pocket and took out something small, the half of the stale roll she had given him, wrapped carefully in a white cloth. It was dry now, almost ridiculous. A poor girl's bread preserved by a man who could buy kingdoms. Emma stared at it. "You kept it?" His expression did not change, but his voice lowered. "You gave me your last food. It was just bread." "No." He looked at her as if she had handed him something holy. It was proof that mercy still exists. Her eyes filled. "Luca!" He stepped closer, but still did not touch her without permission. "I do not know how to be gentle with the world, Emma, but I will learn how to be gentle with you." The room felt too warm, too quiet, too intimate. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to run from him. Both feelings tangled inside her until she could barely breathe. Then a knock struck the door. Luca's expression hardened instantly. His right-hand man entered holding a tablet. "Boss." Roman Vasile didn't leave the city. Luca's eyes went cold. "Where is he?" The man hesitated, then glanced at Emma. "Outside Miss Reed's building, with gasoline." Emma's blood turned to ice. "Mrs. Bell," she whispered. "The children." Luca moved before the words were finished. "Cars. Now." His men rushed out. Emma grabbed his sleeve. "I'm coming." "No, those people are in danger because of me." Luca turned, his gaze fierce. "They are in danger because Roman wants to hurt what I protect. Then protect them." Her voice shook, but she did not let go. "All of them." For one breath, Luca stared at her. Then something like pride, painful and bright, crossed his face. "You ask like you already know. I cannot refuse you." Emma whispered, "Can you?" Luca looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then back into her eyes. "No." Minutes later, the Moretti convoy tore through the city toward Emma's old building, and for the first time in his life, Luca Moretti went to war not for territory, not for revenge, not for power, but because a kind girl with flower on her coat had asked him to save everyone. The city blurred beyond the windows as Luca's convoy cut through red lights, empty intersections, and wet streets shining under broken neon. Emma sat beside him in the back of the car with her hands locked together so tightly her knuckles ached, every breath carrying the same desperate prayer. "Please let them be safe. Please let Mrs. Bell be safe. Please let the children be safe." Luca said nothing, but silence did not mean stillness. His phone moved constantly between calls. One order after another left his mouth in a voice so calm it frightened her more than shouting would have. "Seal the block. No police until my people are inside. Get the tenants out through the rear stairwell. If Roman lights one match, bury him where he stands." Emma flinched at the last sentence. Luca noticed immediately. He lowered the phone and turned toward her. "Do not listen to the parts meant for monsters." "How can I not?" she whispered. "They're coming from you." Something tightened in his jaw, but he did not deny it. "Yes." The honesty hurt more than a lie would have. Emma looked out at the rain-slick city, at the dark shapes of men on motorcycles appearing beside the convoy, at the way ordinary cars pulled aside before anyone asked. Power moved around Luca like weather. It bent streets, silenced fear, opened roads. And she, a bakery girl who still had flour beneath her fingernails, was sitting at the center of it because she had once opened a door. "Are you afraid of me now?" Luca asked quietly. Emma turned back. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were not. There was something there, something almost careful, as if her answer mattered in a way bullets never had. "Yes," she said. His expression closed. "Good. But not only of you." He looked at her. "Of what happens around you. Of what people will do because you care about me." The word slipped out before she could stop it. "Care." Luca went still. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks despite the fear twisting in her stomach. "I mean because I helped you." "No," he said softly. "That is not what you meant." She looked away. The car turned hard into her neighborhood, tires hissing over wet pavement. Ahead, smoke smeared the sky. Emma's heart dropped. "No." Luca's hand came over hers, firm and warm. "Look at me." "Luca, look at me," she obeyed. "I have men inside. Your neighbors are being moved. I will not let your kindness become their funeral." The car stopped before she could answer. Outside, chaos waited. Her building stood at the end of the block. Old bricks soaked black by rain. Windows glowing with flashlights. Tenants crowded behind police tape that had not been placed by police. Moretti men moved everywhere with quiet precision, guiding children into vans, carrying Mrs. Bell in a blanket, blocking every exit with black cars. Near the front steps, Roman Vasile stood with two of his men, one hand gripping a metal lighter, the other holding a red gasoline can. His smile widened when he saw Luca step from the car. "The king arrives," Roman called. "And he brought the little saint." Luca shut the car door before Emma could follow. "Stay inside." Emma grabbed the handle. It was locked. Through the glass she saw Luca walk forward alone, rain darkening his black coat. No weapon in his hand, no visible anger on his face. That made him more terrifying. Roman lifted the gasoline can slightly. One step closer and your precious building burns. Luca stopped. You came after widows and children to prove courage? Roman's eyes flashed. I came after the weakness you suddenly developed. His gaze cut to the car where Emma sat trapped behind tinted glass. She really is pretty in a sad little way. Does she know how many graves you filled, Luca? Does she know what kind of hands she cleaned? Emma's stomach twisted. Luca's voice remained quiet. Her name leaves your mouth once more and you lose your tongue. Roman laughed, but his hand shook around the lighter. There he is, the animal in the suit. Luca took one slow step forward. No, the animal would have killed you at the bakery. Another step. The man gave you until sunset. Roman flicked open the lighter. A small flame trembled in the rain. Emma slammed her palm against the window. Luca! He did not look back. Put it down, he said. Roman's smile turned ugly. Beg. The entire block seemed to hold its breath. Even the rain felt suspended. Emma saw Mrs. Bell watching from across the street, the children crying. Mrs. Alvarez pushing through the crowd with flour still on her sleeves. So many people were afraid because of one man's pride, and Luca stood between all of them and the fire. You want me to beg? Luca asked. Roman's eyes gleamed. For her. For them. For once in your life, kneel. Emma's blood went cold. Luca Moretti did not kneel. Every person on that street knew it. Roman knew it most of all. But then Luca looked toward the car. Through the dark glass, his eyes found Emma as if nothing could hide her from him. She shook her head, tears spilling silently. Don't do this for me. Luca held her gaze for one heartbeat, then lowered himself to one knee in the rain. Gasps rippled through the block. Roman stared, stunned by the impossible thing he had forced into existence. Emma stopped breathing. The most feared man in the city, the man who could buy buildings before breakfast and command armies with a whisper, knelt on the wet pavement because innocent people were behind him and Emma's frightened eyes were in front of him. Roman recovered with a cruel laugh. Look at you. All it took was one hungry girl with soft hands. Luca's head remained bowed, but his voice carried clearly. No, he looked up slowly. All it took was someone worth protecting. Roman's smile faltered. It was the last mistake he made. From the rooftop across the street, a single shot shattered the lighter in Roman's hand. The flame died. Moretti men surged from every direction. Roman screamed as he was thrown face first onto the pavement. The gasoline can kicked away, his men disarmed in seconds. The car lock clicked open. Emma stumbled out into the rain before anyone could stop her. Luca! He rose as she ran to him. For the first time, she did not think about who was watching. She threw her arms around him, and he caught her as if he had been waiting his entire life to hold something without destroying it. His coat was cold and wet beneath her cheek. His arms were careful, almost reverent. You knelt, she whispered, shaking. For them, he said. Then lower, only for her, for you. She pulled back enough to look at him. I never wanted you humiliated. His thumb brushed rain from her cheek. You did not humiliate me. Everyone saw. Let them. His eyes burned into hers. Let every man in this city know exactly what I will do to keep you from crying. Behind them, Roman was dragged upright, blood at his mouth, fury in his eyes. This changes nothing, he spat. My brother will come. The Vasily family will burn everything you love. Luca turned, and whatever softness Emma had touched vanished behind ice. Everything I love is standing behind me. The words struck Emma so deeply she forgot the cold. Roman heard them too. So did everyone. The street went silent. Luca stepped closer to him. Tell your brother this. The girl you thought was my weakness is the reason I am still offering messages instead of funerals. Roman laughed bitterly. You think she can save your soul? Luca looked back at Emma. No. His voice softened. But she reminded me I had one. Roman was taken away. The tenants were moved safely into warm cars. Mrs. Bell clutched Emma's hands and cried blessings over Luca, who looked deeply uncomfortable receiving gratitude from anyone except the woman beside him. The fire never started. The building did not burn. But by midnight, Emma understood something else had gone up in flames. The distance between her small life and Luca's dark empire. He brought her not back to her apartment, but to the mansion. She protested only once, and even that sounded weak after the terror of the night. I can't keep running to your house every time something happens. Luca removed his wet coat and handed it to a waiting servant without looking away from her. Then stop thinking of it as my house. Emma froze. What? Stay here until the threat is gone. That could take days. Then, stay days. Or weeks. Then weeks. Her heart beat too hard. Luca, you can't just move me into your mansion. I can. That isn't the point. Something almost like humor touched his eyes. I am learning that with you, it rarely is. He led her to a guest suite larger than her entire apartment. A fireplace was already lit. Fresh clothes lay folded on the bed. Tea waited on a silver tray. Everything was beautiful, warm, impossible. Emma stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by luxury that felt less like comfort and more like a cage made of gold. Luca noticed, as he noticed everything, you are not a prisoner. Aren't I? She asked softly. The question hit him. She saw it in the way his shoulders tightened. No. You give orders. Guards follow me. Cars appear. Doors lock. Her voice trembled. I know you're trying to protect me, but sometimes protection feels a lot like being owned. Luca went very still. For several seconds, only the fire spoke. Then he took one step back, then another, creating space, giving it to her deliberately. You are right. Emma had not expected that. I am? Yes. His voice was rougher now. I know how to possess territory. I know how to control men. I know how to remove threats. I do not know how to protect something precious without holding it too tightly. Her anger softened before she wanted it to. I'm not something. No. He lowered his gaze. You are someone, and I will remember the difference. Tears stung her eyes. Why does this matter so much to you? Luca looked toward the fire, and for the first time, his face showed an old grief. When I was 9, my mother hid a wounded man in our kitchen during a winter storm. My father told her kindness was a liability. The next morning, that man betrayed us. His jaw tightened. My mother died because she believed mercy could change monsters. Emma's breath caught. Luca, I spent my life proving my father right. He looked back at her. Then you opened your door during a blackout and did exactly what she did. The room seemed to shrink around them. Emma understood then. It was not only gratitude, not only obsession. She had touched a wound buried so deep beneath blood and power that even Luca had mistaken it for stone. And you think I'll die because I was kind, she whispered. I think the world kills gentle people first. His voice dropped. I refuse to let it take you. Emma crossed the room slowly. He did not move. He did not reach. He waited, every muscle locked, as if her choice was the only command he feared. She stopped in front of him and placed her hand lightly over his heart. Beneath her palm, it beat hard and fast. Your mother wasn't wrong for being kind, she said. The man who betrayed her was wrong. Luca closed his eyes. Pain moved across his face. You make mercy sound simple. It isn't. Then why do you keep choosing it? Emma gave a small, sad smile. Because someone has to. When he opened his eyes again, the darkness in them had changed. Not vanished. Never that. But softened around the edges, warmed by something dangerous and tender. Stay tonight, he said. Not because I command it. Because I am asking. Emma's hand remained over his heart. And if I say no? Then I put guards on every street between here and your apartment, and hate every second you are out of my sight. A laugh escaped her, fragile but real. Lucas stared at her like the sound had undone him. There, he murmured. What? That. His hand lifted, then stopped near her cheek. You laughed. She leaned into his touch before she could overthink it. His fingers brushed her skin with impossible care. I'll stay tonight, she whispered. Only tonight. Luca's expression softened with a relief so quiet it almost broke her. Only tonight, he agreed. Though they both knew the lie was gentle. Later, after Emma had bathed, changed into soft clothes that fit too perfectly, and fallen asleep beneath a blanket warmer than anything she had owned in years, Luca stood outside her door with his right-hand man. Roman is secured, the man said. His brother has been notified. Luca's eyes stayed on Emma's closed door. And? Dmitri Vasile is coming to the city. Luca's face turned cold. Good. His man hesitated. This could become a war. Luca looked down at the hand Emma had touched, the place over his heart where her warmth seemed to remain. No, he said quietly. This became a war the moment they made her afraid. Behind the door, Emma slept for the first time in 2 nights. unaware that every light in the mansion had been left burning for her, unaware that the Mafia boss who once trusted no one had ordered his entire empire to guard one gentle girl's dreams. Morning arrived inside the Moretti mansion like a secret Emma was not supposed to touch. Sunlight moved across the marble floors in pale gold ribbons, slipping through tall windows and brushing over velvet chairs, carved doors, crystal glasses, and paintings that looked older than the city itself. For a few disoriented seconds, Emma forgot where she was. Then she saw the fireplace, the silk curtains, the folded clothes on the chair, and the memory returned all at once. The blackout, Luca bleeding on her couch, Roman with gasoline outside her building, Luca kneeling in the rain, Luca saying, "Everything I love is standing behind me." Her heart stumbled. She sat up slowly, pressing a hand against her chest as if she could calm the dangerous warmth growing there. This was not her world. This was not her life. Girls like her did not wake up in mansions guarded by armed men because Mafia kings could not bear the thought of them being afraid. Girls like her went back to work, paid rent late, smiled through exhaustion, and learned not to want anything too beautiful because beautiful things always belong to someone else. A soft knock came at the door. "Miss Reed?" a woman's voice called. "Breakfast is ready whenever you are." Emma opened the door to find a kind-faced housekeeper in a gray dress holding a tray with coffee, fruit, warm pastries, and a small vase of white roses. "Mr. Moretti asked that you eat before making any decisions," the woman said. Emma blinked. "Before making decisions?" The housekeeper's mouth twitched, like she was hiding a smile. "He assumed you would try to leave." Emma looked down, embarrassed. "He assumes a lot." "Yes, miss." Usually correctly. Emma ate because refusing felt childish, but each bite made her think of the stale roll she had shared with Luca, of the way he had kept half of it wrapped like a relic. After breakfast, she found him in a room that was not quite an office and not quite a throne room, though it felt like both. Luca stood at the head of a long black table surrounded by men in suits. Maps of the city spread before him, security footage glowing on wall screens, names and routes and red-marked buildings, arranged like pieces on a chessboard. Every man turned when Emma entered. Conversations died instantly. Luca's gaze found her first, and the hard command in his face softened so quickly it made her breath catch. "You should be resting," he said. Emma folded her arms. "You told the housekeeper I'd try to leave." "You were going to." "That doesn't make it less annoying." A few men looked down, wisely hiding expressions. Luca dismissed them with one glance. The room emptied in seconds, leaving only the two of them, and the city's war spread across the table. Emma approached slowly. "Is this because of Dmitri Vasile?" "Yes, Roman's brother. Older brother, more patient, more cruel." Luca touched one of the red marks on the map. "He controls ports, politicians, and men who burn families to send messages." Emma's stomach tightened. "And he's coming because of me." Luca's eyes lifted. "No, he is coming because he thinks using you will weaken me." "Will it?" The question slipped out too quietly. Luca came around the table, stopping close, but not too close. "Yes." Honesty again. No comforting lie. "Emma, I have survived betrayal, prison threats, assassination attempts, wars between families. None of it made me hesitate." His voice lowered. "Last night I knelt because you were watching and innocent people were behind me. So yes, you weaken me." Her throat tightened. "That sounds like a terrible thing." "It is the most human thing that has happened to me in years." She looked at him, unable to answer. He reached for a folder and placed it before her. "Your building is being repaired. Mrs. Bell has a hotel suite until her apartment is safe. The children downstairs are with their mother, Mrs. Alvarez has 2 guards at the bakery, though she threatened one with a rolling pin when he stood too close to the oven." Despite everything, Emma laughed. Luca's eyes warmed at the sound. "She would," Emma whispered. "She's brave. She loves you." Emma looked down at the folder, touched by the quiet proof that he had protected not only her, but every fragile piece of her life. "You didn't have to do all this. You keep saying that as if it changes anything." "Because it should. It doesn't." His voice became softer. "You asked me to protect them, so I did." The words settled between them like a vow. Emma wanted to thank him, but gratitude felt too small. Before she could speak, one of Luca's men knocked once and entered, face grim. "Boss." A package arrived at the south gate. Luca's expression changed. "For whom?" The man looked at Emma. Miss Reed. Cold moved through the room. Luca crossed to the door with controlled violence in every step. Bring it here. No. Stop. Scan it first. Emma's mouth went dry. Luca, stay behind me. It could be nothing. Nothing does not arrive for you at a guarded mansion. Minutes later, the package was placed on the table by a man wearing gloves. It was a small white box tied with a red ribbon, delicate and obscene against the black wood. Luca opened it himself while Emma stood several steps back, fingers clenched around the edge of her sweater. Inside lay a single charred piece of wood from her apartment door and a photograph of Emma sleeping on the bakery break-room couch weeks earlier, taken without her knowledge. Across the back, written in black ink, were 4 words. Kind girls burn first. Emma went numb. The room tilted. Luca did not speak. That was worse than rage. His silence became something living, something that made every man near him straighten in fear. He picked up the photograph carefully, as though touching it too roughly would hurt her. Who had access to this? He asked. His right-hand man answered, We're tracing it now. Luca's voice remained quiet. Trace faster. Emma backed away until her hips struck the table. Someone was watching me before the blackout? Luca turned to her, and the fury in his eyes softened at the sight of her fear. Emma. No. She shook her head. No. Don't say my name like that. Tell me the truth. His jaw flexed. Yes. Someone was watching. Because of you? Possibly. The word hurt because it was honest. Or because Dmitri already knew Roman had failed to kill me and began searching for anyone who helped. Emma stared at the photograph, at herself curled on a bakery couch during a double shift, exhausted and unaware. Suddenly the mansion did not feel safe. The guards did not feel enough. The world felt full of eyes. I want to go home, she whispered. Luca looked as if she had struck him. You cannot. I know it's not safe. I know. But this room, this house, all these men, this war table, Luca, I can't breathe here. He stepped toward her, then stopped himself, his hands curled at his sides. Tell me what you need. The question was so unexpected that tears burned behind her eyes. No one had ever asked her that during a crisis. People told her to endure, to be practical, to be grateful, to be quiet. Luca asked what she needed while his enemies sent threats to his gates. I need 1 normal hour, she said. His face changed, confusion flickering through the control. Normal. Coffee that doesn't come on a silver tray. A walk without 6 men staring at me. Air. Something that feels like my life. His first instinct was refusal. She saw it. She saw the war inside him. The brutal need to lock her away where no one could reach her, fighting against the promise he had made not to confuse protection with ownership. Finally, he nodded once. 1 hour. Emma blinked. Really? With me? That's not normal. It is the closest I can survive. Despite herself, she smiled. You're very dramatic. I have many enemies. Drama is efficient. An hour later, Emma found herself in the back garden of the mansion, wearing a borrowed coat, and walking beside Luca beneath bare trees, shining with rain. Guards stayed far enough away that she could pretend they were alone. The garden was quiet, all stone paths, winter roses, dark hedges, and a fountain that whispered under the gray sky. Luca walked slowly to match her pace. For a man who commanded violence with such ease, he had a strange gentleness in quiet spaces, as if he did not trust himself to disturb them. Did you grow up here? Emma asked. No, I bought this house after my father died. Did you hate him? Luca was silent for a long moment. Yes. Emma looked at him. Do you still? Some days. And other days? I understand him, which is worse. They reached the fountain. Emma watched water ripple beneath fallen leaves. My mother used to say understanding someone doesn't mean excusing them. Luca looked at her profile. Your mother sounds wise. She was. Emma's voice softened. She worked 2 jobs after my father left. She used to bring home bruised fruit from the market because it was cheaper, then cut away the bad parts and tell me everything could still be sweet if you were patient enough. Luca's gaze lowered, thoughtful and wounded. Is that why you see good where others see waste? Emma smiled sadly. Maybe. Or maybe I just know what it feels like to be the bruised thing no one wants to buy. His expression darkened. Who made you feel that way? She shook her head. Life. Bills. People who look through you because you wear an apron. Men like Barlow. Women who ask why you don't just get a better job, as if poverty is a coat you forgot to take off. Luca's hand lifted, then stopped. May I? The question itself nearly undid her. She nodded. He touched her cheek with the back of his fingers, barely there. You are not unwanted. Her laugh trembled. You barely know me. I know enough. You always say that. Because it is true. He stepped closer, and the cold air between them changed. I know that when you are frightened, you think of others first. I know you apologize for needing help. I know you are hungry more often than you admit. I know you smile at old women so they won't feel lonely. I know you try to make yourself small because the world has punished you every time you needed space. His voice lowered. And I know I want to kill every person who taught you that. Emma should have been horrified. Instead, she felt seen so completely it hurt. You can't fix my whole life with power. No. His thumb brushed once near her jaw. But I can stand between you and anyone who tries to break what remains. The world narrowed to his eyes, his hand, the sound of water, the impossible tenderness of a dangerous man trying to be careful. Emma did not know who moved first. Maybe both of them. Maybe neither. Maybe the space simply surrendered. Luca bent slowly, giving her time to step away, and when she did not, his lips touched hers. The kiss was not rough. That surprised her most. It was restrained, reverent, almost painful in its control, as if he feared that wanting her too much would make him exactly the monster he had warned her about. Emma's hand gripped the front of his coat. For one fragile second, she let herself want something beautiful. Then a gunshot cracked through the garden. Luca moved instantly, pulling her behind him, his body shielding hers before she even understood the sound. Guards shouted. Birds exploded from the trees. Another shot hit the fountain, stone splintering where her head had been moments before. Luca's arms locked around her as he dragged her down behind a low wall. His face was calm, but his eyes were murderous. Are you hit? No, she gasped. Are you? No. He pressed her closer to the stone as men returned fire somewhere beyond the hedges. Stay down. Emma's ears rang. Her mouth tasted like fear and rain and the memory of his kiss. They got through your guards. No. Luca looked toward the mansion, and something colder than fear crossed his face. They were already inside. The shooting stopped within minutes, but the damage had been done. One attacker was dead near the east hedge. Another was captured alive. He carried no identification, only a silver vassal coin in his pocket and a servant's access pass that should not have existed. Luca's household had been breached. His sanctuary had been touched. Emma sat in the library afterward wrapped in a blanket, still shaking, while Luca stood across the room listening to the captured man scream somewhere below. Not loudly. The mansion walls were too thick, but enough. Enough for Emma to remember that Luca's mercy had borders and his enemies lived beyond them. When he finally came to her, his hands were clean, but his eyes were not. Someone on my staff was bought, he said. I am handling it. Emma looked up. Handling it how? His silence answered. She closed her eyes. Luca, he tried to shoot you. I know. He would have killed you in front of me? I know. His control cracked. No, you do not know. He crossed the room and dropped to his knees before her chair, not in humiliation this time, but desperation. The sight stole her breath. Luca Moretti on his knees again, but now his hands gripped the arms of her chair as if the world might take her if he let go. I felt the bullet pass you, he said, voice raw. Do you understand? 1 inch, Emma. 1 inch and your kindness, your laugh, your stubborn little lectures about mercy. All of it would have ended in my garden because I brought you into my life. Tears slipped down her face. You saved me. I endangered you first. You didn't pull the trigger. No, but my world loaded the gun. He bowed his head, breathing hard. I should send you away. Somewhere far. New name, new city. Guards you never see. Money you never have to ask for. Emma's heart cracked. Is that what you want? His laugh was quiet and broken. Want? He looked up at her. I want to lock every door, burn every road, and keep you where no shadow can reach you. I want to be selfish enough to call that love. And are you? He stared at her. I am trying not to be. Emma reached for him. This time she did not wait for permission. She placed both hands on his face, feeling the tension in his jaw, the heat of his skin, the storm he held behind his eyes. Then don't send me away like a problem to solve. Emma, don't make decisions about my life because you're scared. His eyes closed briefly under her touch. I am terrified. The confession was barely audible, but it changed everything. The feared king, the man who made enemies tremble, was terrified because one poor bakery girl might be taken from him. Emma leaned forward until her forehead touched his. So am I. For a long moment, they stayed like that. Two frightened people in a room full of old books and guarded doors, breathing each other's air, as if it were the only safe thing left. Then Luca's phone rang. He answered without moving away from her. His expression turned to stone as he listened. Say that again. Emma's hands fell slowly. Luca stood. The man on the other end spoke quickly, urgently. Luca's gaze moved to Emma with something she had never seen before. Not fear, not rage. Recognition. Bring him in, Luca said, then ended the call. Emma rose. What happened? Luca looked at the photograph from the white box, now sealed in evidence glass on his desk. We found who took the picture of you. Who? His voice went quiet. Your landlord was not just greedy. Barlow was working for Dmitri Vasil. Emma went cold. Why would Dmitri care about me before I helped you? Luca's face darkened. Because the blackout was not random. The ambush was not random. And you were not random. She shook her head, confused. What does that mean? Before Luca could answer, the library doors opened. His men dragged in Mr. Barlow, bruised, terrified, and stripped of every ounce of arrogance he had worn in the bakery. He collapsed onto the carpet and looked not at Luca, but at Emma. I didn't know, he babbled. I swear I didn't know who she was. Emma's breath caught. Who I was? Luca stepped forward, voice lethal. Explain. Barlow trembled. Dmitri said to watch the girl from the bakery, said she mattered because of her mother, said if Moretti ever found her first, everything would be ruined. The room went silent. Emma could hear her own heartbeat. My mother? She whispered. Luca turned slowly toward her, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked truly shaken. Barlow sobbed into the carpet. Her mother hid the ledger, the old Moretti ledger, the one that could destroy the Vasilei family. Emma staggered back. Luca caught her before she fell. His arms closed around her, but his eyes stayed on Barlow with deadly focus. Where is it? Barlow shook his head. I don't know. Dmitri thinks the girl has it, or that she knows where it is. Emma clutched Luca's shirt, her mind spinning through memories of her mother, bruised fruit, tired smiles, whispered warnings about trusting men who asked too many questions. I don't know anything, she whispered. Luca looked down at her, and his voice softened despite the war igniting around them. Maybe you do. No, tears filled her eyes. My mother was just my mother. Luca held her closer. And mine was just my mother until men killed her for being kind. The words struck like thunder. 2 dead mothers. 2 hidden acts of mercy. 2 families bound by secrets buried in blood. Barlow lifted his head, shaking. Dmitri is coming tonight. He won't stop. Not if she has the ledger. Luca's expression became utterly calm. That calm frightened everyone in the room except Emma, because she now understood it was not emptiness. It was a blade being drawn slowly. Then tonight, Luca said, Dmitri Vasilei learns what happens when he hunts the woman I love. Emma stopped breathing. The woman I love. Luca looked at her then, and the darkness in his eyes did not soften, but it became hers. Terrifying. Devoted. Absolute. Outside, thunder rolled over the mansion. Inside, every man waited for Luca's command. Emma stood in his arms, no longer only the girl who had sheltered a stranger during a blackout, but the daughter of a woman who had hidden a secret powerful enough to start a Mafia war. And somewhere in the city, Dmitri Vasilei was coming for her. The woman I love. Luca's words stayed inside Emma like thunder trapped beneath her ribs. She should have asked him to repeat them. She should have demanded whether he meant love, or possession, devotion, or guilt, a vow, or a weapon. But the library had become a war room, and every second belonged to danger. Mr. Barlow was dragged away, still begging. Luca's men moved through the mansion like shadows with guns, and Emma stood near the fireplace, holding the only photograph she had left of her mother. Think, Luca said gently, though nothing else about him was gentle now. Did your mother leave you anything unusual? A box? A letter? A key? A book? Emma shook her head, tears blurring the image of her mother's tired smile. Nothing valuable. We were poor. Luca stepped closer. Valuable things do not always look valuable. Her fingers tightened around the photograph. A memory surfaced, soft and painful. Her mother sitting at their tiny kitchen table, sewing a loose button on Emma's coat, then pressing a small brass key into the hem before stitching it shut. For emergencies, she had said. A girl should always have one door no one else knows about. Emma went still. My coat, she whispered. Luca's eyes sharpened. What coat? My old winter coat, the blue one. I almost threw it away, but I kept it in my apartment closet because it was hers before it was mine. Luca turned instantly. Send a team to her apartment. No. Emma grabbed his arm. If this is about my mother, I'm going. Emma, don't. Her voice shook, but she did not let go. You said you wouldn't make decisions about my life because you were scared. Luca stared at her, trapped by his own promise. Then he gave one sharp nod. You stay beside me, always. The ride back to her building felt like driving into the mouth of a storm. Luca's convoy surrounded the block before they arrived. The repaired lobby smelled of fresh paint and rain. Mrs. Bell had already been moved to safety. The children were gone. Every tenant protected. Emma's apartment, once embarrassing in its poverty, now felt unbearably precious. The patched sofa, the chipped daisy mug, the small table where Luca had left the black card. Her life before him had been hard, but it had been hers. Luca seemed to understand, because he did not touch anything. He stood by the door while Emma opened the closet and pulled out the faded blue coat. Her hands trembled as she found the thick seam near the hem. Luca handed her a knife, handle first. She cut carefully. Something metal slipped into her palm. A tiny brass key, old and dark with age. Tucked beside it was a folded note in her mother's handwriting. Emma's breath broke. My darling Emma, if you are reading this, then the shadows finally found you. I hid the truth where kindness began. Remember the night with the oranges? Remember the church basement? Trust the man who kneels for the innocent. He carries darkness, but he is not empty. Forgive me. I only wanted you to live. Emma sank onto the bed. The night with the oranges, she whispered. Luca crouched in front of her. What does that mean? She closed her eyes, searching through childhood. My mother used to volunteer at St. Agnes Church. One winter night, she brought home a crate of bruised oranges. She said a man had left them in the basement and never came back. Her eyes flew open. The church basement. Luca was already standing. We move. Street. Agnes had been abandoned for years, its stained glass windows boarded, its bell tower cracked, its basement smelling of dust, candle wax, and old secrets. Luca's men swept the building first, then guided Emma down the narrow stairs. In the far wall, behind a rusted shelf, the brass key opened a small iron door hidden beneath peeling plaster. Inside was not money, not jewels, not weapons, only a leather ledger wrapped in oilcloth and a rosary with a silver cross. Luca took one look at the ledger and went silent. What is it? Emma asked. Names, he said, payments, judges, police captains, shipping routes, murders ordered by the Vasile family and signed by Dmitri himself. His gaze lifted to hers. Your mother protected enough truth to bury an empire. Emma touched the rosary with shaking fingers. Why would she do that? A voice answered from the top of the stairs. Because she was foolish enough to believe my brother deserved justice. Dmitri Vasile descended slowly, surrounded by armed men, his gray hair immaculate, his smile cold. And now her daughter has made the same mistake. Luca moved in front of Emma before she could breathe. Dmitri. Dmitri's eyes glittered. Luca Moretti. Still hiding behind women with bleeding hearts? Luca's voice was calm. Still sending cowards to do a dying man's work? Dmitri's smile thinned. Guns rose. Luca's men answered. The basement became a heartbeat away from slaughter. Emma clutched the ledger to her chest. Dmitri looked at her. Give me the book, child. Walk away rich. Refuse, and everyone you love dies. Emma thought of her mother cutting bruised fruit. Mrs. Bell crying in the street. Luca kneeling in the rain. The stranger on her couch sharing stale bread. Her fear did not vanish. It simply became smaller than her choice. No, she said. Dmitri's face hardened. No? Emma lifted her chin. My mother spent her life hiding this because men like you think gentle people are easy to erase. She was wrong about one thing. Her hand found Luca's. We are not alone anymore. Luca's fingers closed around hers. Then the church exploded into movement. Lights flooded the basement windows. Sirens roared outside. Federal agents poured in from the rear entrance, followed by men in tactical gear who did not belong to Luca or Dmitri. Dmitri spun in fury. Luca leaned closer to Emma and murmured, "You asked me to protect everyone." She stared at him. "You called the authorities?" "I called the ones Dmitri had not bought." Gunfire erupted for less than 10 seconds. Luca pulled Emma behind the stone pillar, covering her body with his. When silence returned, Dmitri Vasile was on his knees, blood on his sleeve, agents closing cuffs around his wrists. He looked at Luca with pure hatred. "You betrayed your own world." Luca stood, keeping Emma behind him. "No, I chose hers." Dmitri was taken away, screaming threats that no longer sounded powerful. The ledger left in federal custody. The Vasily Empire began collapsing before dawn. Names were seized, accounts frozen, ships detained, judges resigned. Men who had terrified the city for decades suddenly discovered that fear could change direction. By sunrise, Emma stood outside Street Agnes, beneath a sky washed clean by rain. Luca's coat rested over her shoulders. He stood beside her, silent, as the first light touched the broken church windows. "You said you loved me," she whispered. Luca turned to her slowly. "I did. Did you mean it?" His face softened with something deeper than tenderness. "Emma, I have owned buildings, streets, companies, men's loyalty, men's fear. None of it ever stayed in my hands the way one piece of bread from you did." His voice lowered. "I loved you before I understood the word had survived in me." Tears filled her eyes. "Your world still scares me. It scares me too now." A faint smile touched her mouth. "That's new. You changed the rules." "No," she said softly. "I reminded you there were rules." He looked at her as if she had become his sunrise. "Then remind me for the rest of my life." Months later, Emma's apartment building had a new community kitchen on the ground floor. Mrs. Bell ran the front desk like a queen, and no tenant was ever threatened again. Mrs. Alvarez's bakery expanded into the empty shop next door, funded by an anonymous investor everyone pretended not to recognize. Street Agnes reopened as a shelter for women and children, with Emma's mother's name carved above the door. Luca remained feared, because a man like him did not become harmless overnight. But the city learned something stranger. The most dangerous man in the underworld now answered to a woman who fed the hungry, remembered the forgotten, and could stop his rage with one hand on his heart. On a quiet winter evening, 1 year after the blackout, Emma found Luca standing in her old apartment, staring at the couch where she had first laid him down, bleeding. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. He turned, holding a small velvet box, his expression more nervous than she had ever seen it. "Because this is where my life began again." Emma's breath caught. Luca knelt, not for enemies, not for power, not in humiliation, but in love. "Emma Reed, you gave shelter to a stranger when the whole city went dark. You fed me when you had nothing. You saw a man where others saw a monster. I cannot promise you a simple life." His voice trembled. "But I promise every dark thing in me will spend forever protecting the light in you. Marry me." Emma looked at the feared mafia boss kneeling in her tiny apartment, at the man who had bought buildings and bent empires, at the boy who had lost his mother and still somehow learned to be gentle. She touched his face and smiled through tears. Yes. Outside, snow began to fall over the city. Inside, Luca slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her like a vow finally spoken aloud. The blackout had taken the lights from the city for one night, but because Emma had opened her door, it had given Luca back his soul, and it had given her a love powerful enough to turn every shadow into shelter. Emma thought saying yes would make the world softer, but love did not erase darkness. It simply gave her someone to face it with. 3 weeks after Luca placed the ring on her finger in the tiny apartment where they had first shared bread, the city began whispering again. At first, the whispers were harmless bakery customers pretending not to stare at the diamond on her hand. Mrs. Bell crying every time she called Emma future Mrs. Moretti. Children from the building asking if Luca was really a king because he always arrived in black cars. Emma tried to smile through it all. She still worked at the community kitchen each morning, still helped Mrs. Alvarez at the bakery when orders overflowed, still wore simple sweaters and tied her hair back the same way. But nothing about her life was simple anymore. Men bowed their heads when Luca entered. Reporters waited outside buildings he owned. Women in silk dresses looked at Emma as if she were a mistake wrapped in kindness. And beneath all of it, there was a new kind of threat. Not guns, not fire, not Dmitri Vasilei's men, but the cold judgment of Luca's own world. It came first in the form of an invitation printed on ivory paper. The Moretti Foundation Winter Gala. Emma found it on the breakfast table at the mansion beside a cup of coffee and a single white rose. "You didn't tell me about this," she said. Luca looked up from his phone. "Because I was hoping to avoid it. Your name is on it. My name is on many unpleasant things." Emma picked up the invitation. "It says we are expected to attend together." Luca's expression darkened. "Expected by people who believe expectations are weapons." She studied him carefully. "You don't want me there." His head lifted immediately. "No." The sharpness of his answer startled her. He stood and crossed the room. "That is not true. Then what is true?" He stopped in front of her, his gaze moving over her face with that intense, careful focus that still made her feel seen too deeply. "My world will dress its cruelty in diamonds. They will smile at you, measure you, search for weakness, and call it elegance. I've handled cruelty before. Not theirs. Is it worse because they're rich? It is worse because they will pretend it is kindness." Emma looked down at the invitation again. For a moment, she saw herself through their eyes. The bakery girl, the poor tenant, the woman who had sheltered a bleeding mafia boss during a blackout, and somehow ended up wearing his ring. "If I'm going to marry you," she said softly, "I can't hide from every room that thinks I don't belong." Luca's jaw tightened. "You belong wherever I stand. That's not enough." Pain flickered across his face. She stepped closer and touched his sleeve. "I love that you protect me, but I don't want to exist only inside your protection. I want to stand beside you." Luca was silent for a long time. Then he took her hand and kissed her knuckles, his mouth lingering over the ring. "Then I will stand close enough to destroy anyone who forgets that." The gala was held in a hotel Luca owned but rarely entered, a tower of glass and gold overlooking the river. Emma wore a deep navy dress chosen by herself after rejecting 3 gowns that looked like they belonged to someone pretending to be her. Luca said nothing when she came downstairs, and for one frightening second she thought he disliked it. Then she saw his hand tighten on the banister. "Too much?" she asked nervously. "No," he said, voice low. "I am deciding whether the gala can survive you." She laughed, and his eyes softened like the sound was still his favorite weakness. At the hotel, cameras flashed, violins played, champagne glittered, and every conversation seemed to stop when Luca entered with Emma on his arm. He was beautiful in a black tuxedo, severe and untouchable, while she felt every inch the girl who once counted coins in a bakery apron. But Luca's hand rested at the small of her back, steady and warm, and each time someone looked at her with doubt, his thumb moved once, a silent reminder, "I am here." The first insult came from a woman named Valentina Caruso, the daughter of an old family ally, with red lips and a smile sharp enough to cut silk. "Miss Reed," she said, holding Emma's hand a fraction too long while examining the ring. "How inspiring. A true modern fairy tale. Some women wait years for a place in society. Others simply open the right door during a storm." Emma felt the words land, elegant, and poisonous. Luca's body went still beside her. She gently touched his wrist before he could speak. "You're right," Emma said. Valentina blinked, surprised. Emma smiled softly. "Opening the right door can change everything, especially when someone is bleeding outside, and everyone else is too afraid to help." The silence around them became delicious. Valentina's smile tightened. Luca looked down at Emma, and pride burned in his eyes so openly she nearly forgot the room. "Well," Valentina said coldly, "kindness is charming, but marriage into power requires more than charm." Luca's voice cut in, calm and lethal. "Careful." "One word." Valentina paled. Emma squeezed his hand. "It's all right." "No," Luca said, still looking at Valentina. "It is not." Then he turned to the room, and the conversations died completely. For those confused by her presence, let me clarify. Emma Reed is not being introduced to my world for approval. She is being introduced because soon, Every foundation, shelter, building, and legal charity under my name will answer to her vision. Emma's breath caught. Luca continued, voice steady. Anyone who disrespects her, disrespects me. Anyone who humiliates her loses access to my money, my protection, and my patience. His gaze returned to Valentina. You have already lost too. Valentina lowered her eyes. The gala resumed, but differently now. People approached Emma with careful smiles, but some of them were real. A doctor thanked her for reopening Street Agnes. A young woman from the shelter cried quietly and said Emma's mother's name was the first safe name she had seen in years. An elderly man told Luca, with trembling courage, that Emma had made his empire look almost human. Luca did not answer, but his hand found Emma's beneath the table. For the first time that night, she understood that she was not only being tested by his world, she was changing it by standing there. Near midnight, Luca led her onto the balcony away from the music. The river below reflected the city lights, and cold wind lifted loose strands of her hair. You were magnificent, he said. Emma leaned against the railing, exhausted. I was terrified. So was I. She looked at him in disbelief. You? Terrified? He stepped closer. Every second. Of what? His eyes moved over her face. That they would make you feel small and I would become the man I used to be. Emma's expression softened. You didn't. Because you touched my wrist. That's all it takes now? From you? His mouth curved faintly. Sometimes. She turned toward him. Luca, did you mean what you said about the foundations answering to me? Yes. That's a lot of responsibility. You already carry responsibility for strangers with nothing but tired hands and a good heart. I am merely giving you resources worthy of the burden. Tears stung her eyes. You make me sound stronger than I am. He stepped close enough that the warmth of him blocked the winter air. No, the world made you feel weaker than you are. Behind them, the balcony door opened. Luca's right-hand man appeared, face grim. Boss. Luca did not look away from Emma. Not now. It's about the vassal ledger. Luca turned. What about it? The man hesitated. One name was missing from the arrest list. Someone inside the federal task force erased it before the raid. The cold returned, sharper than the wind. Emma's hand tightened around the railing. Who? The man looked at her first, then at Luca. A woman, Helena Marconi, former intelligence broker. She has been trying to reach Miss Reed. Luca's expression became stone. Why? The answer came from behind them, spoken in a smooth female voice. Because her mother did not hide only one secret. Emma turned. At the far end of the balcony stood a woman in a silver gown, older, elegant, with eyes that looked painfully familiar. Not like Emma's mother exactly, but close enough to steal the air from her lungs. Luca moved in front of Emma instantly. The woman raised both hands. I did not come armed. Luca's voice was deadly. That was foolish. Helena smiled sadly. Perhaps. But I came for the girl, not the king. Emma stepped beside Luca despite his silent protest. Who are you? Helena's gaze softened. Someone who owed your mother a debt and failed to pay it. Emma's heart began to pound. You knew her? I loved her like a sister. Luca's eyes narrowed. And yet you let Dmitri hunt her daughter. Pain crossed Helena's face. I thought Emma was safer poor, invisible, forgotten. She looked at Emma. Your mother made me promise never to approach unless the ledger surfaced, or unless Luca Moretti found you. Emma's voice barely worked. Why would that matter? Helena reached into her clutch slowly. Luca's hand moved beneath his jacket. Careful, he warned. Helena removed a small envelope and held it out. Because your mother believed only two things could protect you from what you inherited. The truth and a Moretti who remembered mercy. Emma took the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter, older than the one hidden in her coat, written in her mother's hand. My sweet Emma, if Helena gives you this, then my past has finally reached your future. There is something I never told you because I wanted you to grow up without blood on your name. Your father did not abandon us. He was killed protecting evidence against the Vasily family. And Luca Moretti's mother died the same night, trying to save him. Emma's vision blurred. Luca went utterly still beside her. Helena's voice softened. Your families were connected long before the blackout. Your father and Luca's mother worked together to expose Dmitri Vasily. They hid the ledger, but Dmitri found them. Your mother escaped with you. Luca's mother did not. Luca looked as if the ground beneath him had vanished. Emma turned to him, but he was staring at Helena with a face carved from grief. My father told me my mother died because she hit a stranger. She did, Helena said. Emma's father. Silence crashed over them. Emma reached for Luca's hand, but he stepped back once, not from rejection, from shock. Luca, she whispered. He looked at her then, and she saw the boy inside the feared man, the boy who had built his life around a wound that had never been fully named. Your father survived long enough to get Emma and her mother out, Helena continued. Your mother stayed behind to delay Dimitri's men. She saved them. Emma covered her mouth, tears spilling over. All her life, she had believed her father simply left. All Luca's life, he had believed kindness had killed his mother for nothing. But their parents had been bound by sacrifice, by courage, by the same impossible mercy that brought Emma to the alley during the blackout. Luca turned away, gripping the railing so hard his knuckles whitened. Emma went to him. This time, he did not stop her. She placed both hands over his. She didn't die because mercy failed, Emma whispered. She died because she saved us. His breath shook. I hated her kindness. Then forgive it. He closed his eyes. I don't know how. Emma leaned her forehead against his shoulder. Start by letting it save you too. For a long moment he did not move. Then his hand turned beneath hers, fingers locking with desperate strength. Helena watched them with wet eyes. There is one more thing. Luca's head lifted slowly. Choose your next words very carefully. Helena nodded. Dimitri had a son hidden outside the official family records. He was not arrested. He has the missing name from the ledger. He knows Emma is the key to everything his father lost. Emma's blood turned cold. What does he want? Helena looked toward the ballroom, where music still played for people who had no idea darkness had entered the balcony. Revenge. And the Moretti wedding. Luca's grip on Emma tightened, but not like a cage, like a vow. Then he will come to a wedding, Luca said quietly, and find a funeral. Emma looked up at him. No. His eyes burned. Emma! Not a funeral. Her voice trembled, but she held his gaze. An ending. Luca stared at her, breathing hard, standing between the woman he loved and the ghosts of both their families. Then slowly he nodded. An ending, he promised. Inside the ballroom, the orchestra reached its final song. Outside on the balcony, under the winter stars, Emma understood that the blackout had not begun their story. It had only reopened a door their parents had died trying to close. And now, with Luca's hand wrapped around hers and a new enemy moving in the dark, she would have to decide whether kindness could survive not only poverty and fear, but legacy, blood, and the full weight of a mafia war. The wedding was supposed to be small, but nothing in Luca Moretti's life knew how to remain small. By the time spring touched the city, street, Agnes had been filled with white flowers, warm candles, repaired stained glass, and quiet security men who pretended very badly to be ordinary guests. Emma stood in the bridal room wearing a simple ivory dress, her mother's silver cross pinned inside the lining, her hands trembling around a bouquet of white roses and bruised orange blossoms chosen in memory of the fruit her mother once saved from the market. Mrs. Bell cried beside her. Mrs. Alvarez fixed a loose curl near Emma's cheek and muttered that if anyone ruined this day, she would personally beat them with a rolling pin. Emma laughed, but her eyes moved to the window where Luca's men watched the street. Dimitri's hidden son had still not appeared. That frightened her more than if he had. Downstairs, Luca waited near the altar in a black suit, motionless beneath the colored light of the church windows. He looked dangerous even there, surrounded by flowers and hymns. But when Emma appeared at the end of the aisle, the entire church vanished from his face. The king, the boss, the feared Moretti name, all of it fell away. Only the man remained, the man she had found bleeding in the rain, the man who had kept half a stale roll like a sacred relic, the man who had knelt for the innocent and learned to ask instead of command. Emma walked toward him with tears in her eyes, and Luca looked at her as if every dark road he had ever taken had somehow led to this light. The priest had just begun when the church doors opened. A young man entered alone, dressed in gray, his face calm, his eyes cold with inherited hatred. Luca's guards moved instantly, but the man lifted both hands. No weapons, he said. Only truth. Luca stepped in front of Emma. You chose the wrong church. The man smiled faintly. My father said the same thing to your mother before she died. Emma felt Luca's body go rigid. The man looked at her. My name is Adrian Vasile, and before you marry him, you should know what his family did after yours died. Luca's voice turned lethal. Enough. Emma touched his arm. Let him speak. Luca looked at her, furious and afraid, but stepped aside by half an inch. Adrian's smile sharpened. Your father and his mother died protecting evidence, yes. But Luca's father took that evidence afterward and used it not for justice, but leverage. He built the Moretti empire on the same blood your mother spent her life running from. The church fell silent. Luca's face went pale with a rage that looked too much like pain. Adrian continued, Ask him how many lives his family ruined with secrets your parents died to expose. Emma turned to Luca. Is it true? Luca's jaw tightened. My father used everything he could, including the ledger? Pieces of it. His voice was rough. I didn't know until recently how much. Adrian laughed softly. Convenient. Emma stepped forward, still holding her bouquet. And what do you want? Adrian's eyes flickered. For him to lose what my family lost. You mean me? I mean his peace. Emma looked at him then not as a monster, not as a threat, but as a son carrying poison that had been poured into him before he was old enough to refuse it. Then you are still obeying your father. The words struck him harder than any weapon. His smile vanished. Don't speak about him. Why? Because he loved you? Or because he taught you revenge was the same thing as love? Luca whispered. Emma, move back. She did not. My mother spent her whole life hiding so I could live without this hatred. Luca's mother died so we could escape it. Your father turned both sacrifices into war. And now you are standing in a church, trying to make dead people bleed again. Adrian's eyes shone with fury, but beneath it something cracked. You know nothing. I know what it feels like to inherit pain. Emma's voice trembled. But I also know pain is not a crown. You can put it down. For one breath, Adrian looked young, lost. Then one of the candles near the side aisle exploded in a burst of smoke. Panic ripped through the church. Guests screamed. Guards moved. Adrian's eyes widened, genuine shock breaking through his mask. That wasn't me. Luca grabbed Emma and filled her against him as smoke filled the aisle. Men in black entered through the side doors. Vasile loyalists, not Adrian's. The wedding became chaos. Luca shielded Emma with his body, moving her behind the altar while gunfire cracked against stone pillars. Mrs. Alvarez dragged Mrs. Bell beneath a pew. Helena Marconi pulled a pistol from beneath her silver jacket and fired with terrifying accuracy. Adrian stood frozen until one of the attackers aimed at Emma. Then he moved. He shoved her aside just as the bullet struck his shoulder. Emma screamed as he fell. Luca's men overwhelmed the attackers within minutes, but the church was left smoking, shattered, and silent, except for Adrian's ragged breathing. Luca stood over him, gun in hand, face cold enough to end a bloodline. Adrian looked up, bleeding. I didn't come to kill her, he gasped. They followed me. They wanted both families dead. Emma knelt beside him despite Luca's sharp protest. He saved me. Luca's hand shook around the gun. Everyone watched him, the empire, the enemies, the ghosts, the woman he loved. This was the old wound asking for its old answer. Blood for blood, grave for grave. But Emma's hand closed around his wrist, gentle and absolute. Luca looked down at her. The church was broken around them. Their wedding flowers were trampled. Smoke curled toward the repaired windows. And still her eyes asked him to choose mercy, without pretending it was easy. Slowly, Luca lowered the gun. Get him a doctor, he ordered. Adrian stared at him in disbelief. Luca's voice was rough. Your father's war ends here. Do not make me regret letting you live. Adrian closed his eyes, and for the first time, no hatred answered. Hours later, after statements were taken, wounds were dressed, and the remaining Vasile loyalists were arrested, the priest found Luca and Emma standing alone in the damaged sanctuary. We can postpone, he said gently. Emma looked at the cracked aisle, the fallen roses, the smoke-stained altar. Then she looked at Luca. No. Luca's eyes softened. Emma, our parents died waiting for peace. I don't want to wait. So they married in the half-ruined church, with fewer flowers, broken glass swept to the corners, Mrs. Bell sobbing into a handkerchief, Mrs. Alvarez holding a rolling pin like a ceremonial weapon, Helena watching through tears, and Luca standing before Emma with blood on his cuff and devotion in his eyes. His vow was not polished, it was barely steady. I was raised to believe power meant fear. You taught me power can also mean shelter. I cannot promise the dark will never follow us, but I promise I will never again mistake control for love. I will protect your light, listen when you ask for mercy, and spend every day proving that the man you saved during the blackout was worthy of your door. Emma cried before she finished her own vow. I had nothing when I found you except one candle, one blanket, and half a piece of bread. I thought I was giving shelter to a stranger. I did not know I was opening the door to the rest of my life. I promised to stand beside you, not behind you, to remind you who you are when the darkness gets loud, and to love you not because you are powerful, but because you chose to become gentle with me. When Luca kissed her, the church erupted not with luxury, not with spectacle, but with the kind of joy that feels earned after terror. Months became years. Adrian Vasile survived and disappeared into witness protection after testifying against the last loyalists of his father's empire. Agnes became the safest shelter in the city, and Emma Moretti ran it with fierce tenderness, making sure every woman, child, elderly tenant, and frightened stranger had a door that opened in the dark. Luca remained Luca, feared by enemies, obeyed by powerful men, dangerous when danger came too close. But he no longer ruled only through fear. The Moretti empire shifted, slowly and painfully, toward protection, housing, legal aid, clinics, bakeries, and shelters built in neighborhoods men like Barlow once preyed upon. And every year, on the anniversary of the blackout, Luca and Emma returned to her old apartment. They lit one candle. They placed one roll of bread on the table. They remembered the night the city went dark, and kindness became a debt stronger than blood. One winter evening, their little daughter Sophia pointed to the couch and asked, "Is this where Papa was sleeping when Mama saved him?" Luca looked at Emma, his expression softer than the world would ever believe. "Yes," he said. "This is where your mother saved my life." Sophia frowned seriously. "Because he was hurt?" Emma smiled. "Because he was alone." Luca took Emma's hand, his thumb brushing over her wedding ring. Outside, snow fell quietly over a city that had once felt too cruel for gentle people. Inside, warmth filled the tiny apartment where everything had begun. The Mafia boss had never forgotten her kindness, not because it made him indebted, but because it made him human. And Emma, the girl who once gave shelter to a stranger during the blackout, finally understood that some doors do more than open. Some doors change the fate of everyone who walks through them. CTA. If this story pulled you into the shadows and brought you back into the light, stay with us for more dark romantic stories where kindness is never weakness, love becomes protection, and even the most dangerous hearts can be changed by one gentle soul. Subscribe and step into the next story, where destiny waits behind another locked door. 5 years after the blackout, Emma Moretti still kept the old black card in the cracked drawer of her restored apartment above the laundromat. The building no longer leaked. The halls smelled of fresh paint and warm bread from the community kitchen downstairs, and Mrs. Bell still sat by the front desk every afternoon with a blanket over her knees, greeting every resident as if she personally owned the city. Emma could have thrown the card away years ago. Luca had given her far more than a number to call. He had given her a home, a family, a daughter with his dark eyes and her stubborn heart, and a life where fear no longer decided the shape of every morning. But she kept the card because it reminded her of the night she had been poor, hungry, exhausted, and still chose to open the door. On the 5th anniversary of that night, a storm rolled over the city again. Power flickered through the neighborhood. Thunder shook the old windows. And Agnes' shelter filled with women and children seeking warmth. Emma was in the kitchen helping serve soup when Sophia tugged on her coat. "Mama," the little girl whispered. "There's someone outside." Emma looked through the rain-streaked glass and saw a teenage boy standing beneath the awning, soaked to the bone, one hand pressed to his side, his face pale with the same trapped look Luca had worn years ago. Every guard near the door stiffened. Luca, who had just arrived with extra blankets, followed Emma's gaze and went still. "Stay behind me," he said. Emma touched his arm. "He's a child. Children can be used by dangerous men. So can fear." Luca looked at her, and the old war passed through his eyes, the need to protect, the instinct to close every door, the memory of blood in the rain. Then he stepped aside, not because he was no longer dangerous, but because he had learned that love meant trusting the woman who had taught him mercy. Emma opened the door herself. The boy nearly collapsed into her arms. "Please," he gasped. "I didn't know where else to go." Luca caught him before he hit the floor, lifting him with careful strength. Emma saw the blood on the boy's shirt and felt the past breathe against her neck. "Bring towels," she ordered. "Call Dr. Marino. Sophia, stay with Mrs. Bell." Luca looked at her over the boy's head. Emma, she knew what he was asking. She knew the danger. She also knew that every life they had built meant nothing if they let fear turn them into the people they had survived. "We give shelter," she said softly. Luca's face changed. Not surrender, not weakness. Something deeper. Faith. He nodded once. "Then we give shelter." The boy's name was Noah, and by midnight they learned he was the son of a former vassal loyalist who had tried to disappear but had been found by men still chasing old revenge. Noah carried no ledger, no secret empire, no grand inheritance. He carried only a warning. A small group of criminals planned to attack Street Agnes because they believed Emma Moretti's mercy had made the Moretti name soft. Luca listened without moving, one hand resting on the back of Emma's chair, the other holding Sophia's tiny drawing of their family. When Noah finished, Luca's voice was quiet. "They still misunderstand mercy." Emma looked up. "What will you do?" He met her eyes. "Protect the shelter, without becoming the reason it needs protection." By dawn, the attack never happened. The men were arrested before they reached the block, not vanished into the river, not buried in secret, but delivered alive with evidence to authorities Luca had spent years helping clean of corruption. It was not the old way. It was harder. It was slower. But when Emma watched him return as the sun rose, his coat wet from rain and his hands clean, she knew this was the victory their parents had wanted. Not a world without darkness, but a door that stayed open anyway. That evening, Emma found Luca in the old apartment, staring at the couch again. "You're thinking too loudly," she said. He turned, and the feared man the city still whispered about smiled only for her. "I was thinking that 5 years ago, you saved a monster because you saw a man." Emma walked to him and slipped her arms around his waist. "And today?" His hand covered hers. "Today, I opened the door because you taught the man how to survive the monster." Tears warmed her eyes. Outside, the repaired windows glowed above the street. Inside, Sophia slept with Mrs. Bell's knitted blanket tucked around her shoulders. Noah rested safely under guard, and the shelter lights burned bright against the storm. Emma rested her cheek against Luca's chest, listening to the heartbeat she had once feared might stop on her couch. "Do you ever regret it?" she whispered. "The night you came back for me?" Luca lowered his mouth to her hair. "Every empire I owned before you was empty. Every breath after you was mercy." She smiled. "That sounds like a yes or no question you avoided beautifully." His quiet laugh moved through her. "No, Emma, I do not regret finding my way to your door." He turned her gently toward the window, where the city shimmered under rain and light. "And I never forgot your kindness." Emma looked at the streets that had once frightened her, at the shelter that now welcomed strangers, at the husband who had learned that power without tenderness was only another kind of darkness. She understood then that kindness had not ended the war in one night. It had begun a different empire, one built not on fear, but on shelter. And as Luca held her close while thunder rolled harmlessly over the city, Emma knew the blackout had never really taken the light away. It had only shown them where the light was needed most. 10 years after the blackout, the city no longer remembered the storm the way Emma did. To most people it had become an old news headline, a night of dead traffic lights and flooded streets. A strange inconvenience, swallowed by time. But Emma remembered the sound of rain against broken windows, the weight of a bleeding stranger leaning on her shoulder, the warmth of half a stale roll shared beneath candlelight. Luca remembered too. He remembered her small hands cleaning blood from his face. He remembered the blanket she could not afford to give away. He remembered the moment she looked at him without fear long enough to see the wounded man beneath the monster. Every year, they returned to the old apartment, but this year was different. Sophia was 9 now, serious-eyed and bright, holding her father's hand while asking why the couch still mattered when they had much nicer ones at home. Emma smiled from the doorway, watching Luca crouch to their daughter's height. "Because this couch saved me," he said. Sophia frowned. "A couch can't save people." Luca looked at Emma, and the softness in his face still made her heart ache. "No, But the person who let me lie on it did. Sophia considered this, then placed one small roll of bread on the table exactly as tradition demanded. Then we should always keep one here, she declared, in case someone else needs saving. Emma's eyes filled. Luca rose slowly, his hand finding hers. The city outside shimmered beneath winter rain, but inside the apartment, candles burned bright. Downstairs, Street Agnes volunteers were preparing dinner for 200 people. Mrs. Bell, older but still commanding, had organized blankets by color. Mrs. Alvarez had sent enough pastries to feed an army. Noah, the boy they had sheltered years ago, now worked as a legal advocate for runaway children, standing at the same door Emma once opened, making sure no frightened soul was turned away. Luca's empire had changed so much that men who once feared his name now feared disappointing the shelters, clinics, and housing projects carrying Emma's vision. He was still dangerous. He would always be dangerous. But his danger had become a wall around the vulnerable instead of a blade against the world. That night, as the storm deepened, the shelter lights suddenly flickered. For one breath, everyone froze. Then the power went out across the block. Darkness fell, complete and familiar. Sophia grabbed Emma's hand. "Mama?" Emma knelt and kissed her forehead. "It's all right." Luca's guards moved instantly, but Luca lifted one hand and the room settled. Then, from the kitchen, Mrs. Alvarez shouted, "Nobody panic. We have candles, soup, and I am too old to be impressed by bad weather." Laughter rose in the dark. One by one, candles were lit. Warm gold spread across frightened faces, tired faces, hopeful faces. Emma looked around the shelter her mother's sacrifice had helped create and understood, finally, that the blackout had never been an ending. It had been a beginning that kept repeating every time someone chose mercy over fear. A knock sounded at the door. Everyone turned. Luca moved first, instinct still sharp, but this time Emma walked beside him. Together they opened it. A young woman stood in the rain, holding a baby beneath her coat, trembling with cold and shame. "Please," she whispered. "I don't have anywhere to go." Emma looked at Luca. 10 years passed between them in one glance. Blood, bread, war, vows, grief, forgiveness, shelter, love. Luca stepped back, opening the door wider. His voice was low and gentle. "Come inside." The young woman broke into tears. Emma wrapped a blanket around her shoulders while Sophia hurried forward with the roll of bread from the table. Luca watched his daughter give it away, and for a moment, the feared Mafia boss had to look down because his eyes had gone bright. Emma touched his hand. "Still think kind girls burn first?" she whispered. Luca looked at the shelter glowing in candlelight, at their daughter sharing bread, at the woman and baby now safe from the storm, at the life that had grown from one act of impossible tenderness. He brought Emma's hand to his lips. "No," he said softly. "Kind girls become the light everyone else follows home." Outside, the city remained dark, but inside, no one was alone. And Luca Moretti, the man who had once ruled through fear, stood beside the woman who had saved him with a blanket, a candle, and half a piece of bread, knowing he had never truly owned an empire until Emma taught him how to build one out of shelter. If this story made you feel the power of kindness, protection, and love, born in the darkest moment, stay with this channel for more unforgettable dark romance stories where gentle hearts change dangerous men and one act of mercy can rewrite an entire destiny. Subscribe, keep listening, and step into the next story, waiting behind another door in the storm.